Good afternoon and welcome to the Back to Mac McMaster Student Town Hall. Thank you for joining us. My name is Susan Ty and I'm McMaster's Provost and Vice President Academic. It's my sincere pleasure to host this event today. Though we are gathering virtually today, I'd like to begin by acknowledging that McMaster University stands on the traditional territory shared between the Haudenosaunee and Mississauga nations and is protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Over the course of the past week, students, staff, and faculty across McMaster have submitted nearly 400 questions about our return to campus this academic year. This is a tremendous amount of engagement, and I want to say thank you. We will do our best today to answer the most frequently asked questions, as well as cover questions on a wide variety of topics. The sli.do platform will remain open during this event. You can add your questions by using the URL and code on the YouTube frame and in the video description. Though we will not be able to answer every question today, we will be using these questions to continue to update our Back to Mac website, where you will find information about our gradual transition back to campus, as well as COVID-19 updates. Thank you to our leaders from across McMaster who have joined us today to answer your questions about the fall. Today's panel includes Paul O'Byrne, Dean and Vice President, Faculty of Health Sciences, Kim Dye, Acting Vice Provost Faculty, Arig Al-Shabaya, Associate Vice President, Equity and Inclusion, Sean Van Kunent, Associate Vice President, Students and Learning and Dean of Students, Doug Welsh, Vice Provost and Dean of Graduate Studies, and Debbie Martin, Assistant Vice President and Chief Facilities Officer. I will now turn it over to our President and Vice Chancellor, David Farrar, to say a few welcoming remarks. David, over to you.
Thank you, Susan, and good afternoon. Welcome to Back to McMaster's virtual town hall for students. Thank you for joining us today and for submitting your questions in advance. We'll answer your questions as much as we're able to, knowing that we don't yet have all the answers as the pandemic keeps changing along with public health information and advice. We appreciate your patience as we continue to work through this information. I think I speak on behalf of all of us that we've missed you and we're really looking forward to having our students back on campus. This pandemic has been without precedent, but I'm proud to be part of a community that has risen to the challenge. McMaster is a remarkable community and the caring and support that has been shown is inspirational. When we sent people home from the university in March of last year, no one thought that we would be in a pandemic this long. More than a year later, our optimism is growing with vaccination levels and the new freedoms that are coming with the first stage reopening. Most of the questions that we are currently hearing from students center around what is the fall term going to look like on campus. Our Return to McMaster group has been meeting regularly, working with experts from across the university and leaning on the expertise of McMaster's researchers, staff, faculty, and students. We're all focused on making decisions that are evidence-based and that put the health and well-being of our students and our community first. Everyone here at McMaster is working to make the fall term safe and engaging. We want to see as much of activity as possible on campus, and this includes the facilities and support that you rely on, like the library, student wellness, and student advising. We're planning for multiple scenarios as public health and government rules change. Thankfully, we're seeing people anxious to get vaccinated, which is the deciding factor for all of the work we do as we prepare for Back to Mac. So take care of yourself, wear a mask, maintain physical distance, and stay safe. I know that you're eager to hear about our plans, so I'll pass this back to our provost, Susan Ty. We look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you so much, President Farrar. So we have a lot of questions to cover, so we're going to get right into it. So our first question was one of the most asked questions from students. And that question is, when will we have an official decision or plan as to what the fall 2021 term will look like? And so really, I want to focus in on the fact that our fall 2021 semester is to provide as many safe and meaningful in-person experiences for our students as possible. This has been the focus of our planning. This includes expanded opportunities for small group learning across all faculties, but also in-person student life activities and campus resources. We will be able to touch on some of the more detailed elements as we progress through this session today. On Wednesday, June the 16th, the class schedule for the fall was posted on Mosaic. The schedule clearly indicates a teaching mode for every course. So that could be in-person component, online, virtual, or some combination of those techniques. For questions about the modes of learning, for individual courses, you can reach out to your faculty, your department, or instructor directly. The second question we had really relates to the winter term. And I think it's important that we address this answer today, although the focus will be on the fall term. So will the winter term be more in person or still more online? So as vaccination rates across Hamilton and Ontario continue to increase and COVID-19 cases continue to fall, we are becoming increasingly optimistic about the winter 2022 term, and it will be as close to pre-pandemic operations as possible. We are currently planning to return to in-person classes in the winter term. And while still benefiting from the lessons learned from last year and virtual learning, this includes encouraging instructors to record their lectures whenever possible. We are also planning to further ramp up on-campus life activities so that we are closer to, if not exactly where we were pre-pandemic levels. So this includes student space and social spaces. And as always, we are creating agile plans so that we can adjust to meet any ongoing public health guidelines. Our next question is for Paul O'Byrne. And this question is, knowing the rise of variants and vaccines' efficacy against those variants, would it still be possible to have in-person learning? Over to you, Paul.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Tai. Good afternoon, everybody. There is indeed a concern about the rise in variants for this coronavirus, which originally came from the UK and South Africa, and most recently from India with the Delta variant of concern that is more infective than some of the other variants have been and appears to be on track to become the dominant variant in Ontario, where currently the Alpha variant is dominant. So that's the bad news. The really good news is that the vaccine efficacy for people who are fully vaccinated is extremely high against all of the variants of the virus. Indeed, some data just published this week suggests that all of the vaccines that we have in Ontario provide close to or more than 90% effect against infection, but is virtually completely effective, 100% effective against the serious consequences of infection, such as hospitalization or, of course, death. And so as a result of this, the single most important contribution by staff, by faculty and students is to protect themselves and each other by getting fully vaccinated, optimally prior to returning to the campus or studying on campus. Of course, in addition, it's important to continue with the measures we currently have, including screening, masking, and physical distancing, that will ensure that we all keep safe until this pandemic is completely resolved.
Thank you, Dr. O'Byrne. And it really is important to note that we have leading experts in the Faculty of Health Science who have been fighting COVID, and we're very grateful to have access to these experts on campus. Our next question is about exams. And so I'm going to ask Kim Dye to answer this question. There have been rumors circulating that McMaster aims to have in-person exams, even for virtual classes. Kim, can you please comment on the accuracy of this statement?
Certainly. Thank you, Susan. I always love talking about exams, just as all students do. So I have been having the privilege of working with our associate deans and assistant deans throughout the year. We meet on a weekly basis and talk about many things. And we spent time talking about final examinations as well. And we decided that final examinations will continue in the remote environment for fall 2021. We've communicated this to instructors, especially if they're beginning online and virtual courses, they will stay online and virtual, and all of the testing will be online as well. And this includes the exams. The complement of that, if you're in a course that has in-person components, this doesn't necessarily mean that the in-person components will be evaluated in person, that there will be midterm and other tests that occur online as well. Within in-person components, so if you're in a lab or a tutorial, there might be quizzing that's in person. We can use that space and time to do that. As I say that final examinations will be in the remote environment, I will have to note that there might be some exceptions. There are accredited programs, clinical programs, where there may be some exceptions where some of the accredited testing needs to happen in person outside of that scheduled time. So do take a look at your Avenue to Learn course outlines. Make sure you communicate with your instructors if you are uncertain.
Great, thank you for that. And I think, Kim, we're really trying to ensure that we communicate upfront what our plans are and really not to change them as we move along the process. So thank you for that. So we received two similar questions around arrangements for students who will not be able to come to campus. So I'm going to ask Kim Dye and Arig Al-Shabaya to help answer this question. And there's actually two questions. So will all in-person lectures be recorded? Many disabled and immune compromised students will not be able to attend due to transportation and safety concerns. And then secondly, if a student due to certain health issues cannot come to campus, would they be accommodated in any way? So I'll turn it over to the two of you to address that question, those questions.
Perfect. Thanks. Eric, is it okay if I start on this and talk about some of the spaces?
Please, that's perfect.
Thank you. So we are increasing the capacity to record lectures. We have a system that's called Echo 360. It's a lecture capture system, and we're increasing the number of rooms that have that system built into it. And this is something that we've done not just in response to the pandemic. We've heard that students appreciate these opportunities to review lectures. Things happen in life and you miss lectures, and we know that there's a lot of benefits to all of our students to have access to those records. So this isn't just about accessibility, it's about universal design for all of our students. So we have increased and upgraded our campus spaces, and we'll continue to do so over spring and summer. The majority of our large lecture halls have the capacity to capture lectures, and many of our rooms have additional capacity with screens and cameras that will allow for some more complex hybrid learning. So the question though that was asked is, will all in-person lectures be recorded? Instructors are being encouraged to record their lectures, and I know Susan alluded to this at the beginning. Large lectures in which the lecturer is presenting, just like I'm doing now, it makes sense to record those, and we can easily do that with this system. Again, this provides a lot of opportunities for all of our students to learn better. Smaller seminars, inquiry courses, graduate classes will not necessarily be recorded. They're a little bit more complex. It's not just the lecturer speaking in the classroom, it's students who are speaking as well. And we want to be respectful of the privacy of our students, and we want to allow them to engage in ways that allow them to be honest in their conversations. And that's not always amenable to a recorded lecture. So we're not requiring it of everybody, and it will really be attuned to what kind of learning is happening in those spaces. If you are enrolled in an online or virtual course, then great, you'll have access to these resources in online and virtual spaces. If you're enrolled in an in-person course, again, there are pieces of this that we're going to have to understand a little bit more in detail. If you're in a lecture hall, that will likely be recorded and you'll have access to that. If you're in a component that's designated in person, such as the lab or tutorial, it's probably not going to be recorded. You're going to need to be in that space. But we do completely empathize and understand that students are in really difficult positions now, trying to understand what campus is going to look like, understanding their comfort level, and understanding their health as well. So as Dr. Tai indicated at the beginning, you will be able to look at your courses now and identify what's in person, what's online, what's in virtual. If you are most comfortable in fall, doing most of your work remotely, then you can intentionally choose some of those courses. You can identify the courses that are online and virtual. You could always defer the courses that have in-person components until the winter term or until another year. However, I do want to caution that not all of our courses can be offered in these dual modalities. Not all courses can be missed in your program. So I do want you to pay attention to program progression. If there are degree requirements that have an in-person component, then reach out to your associate dean's office or the program lead just to have a conversation about what components you can do in the online and remote environment and which ones have to happen in person. And they'll bet their best place to advise you on some of those decisions. But Arig, I'll pass it to you just to talk a little bit more about some of these specific accommodations that students will have access to.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Kim and Dr. Tai. I think what I'll say is just to reinforce to students that we are paying attention to accessibility and accommodation needs. We do have processes already in place through the Student Accessibility Services. So that's sas@mcmaster.ca. So we do encourage students who may be thinking that they do or will have accessibility and accommodation needs come up to reach out to the Student Accessibility Service and reach out early. We appreciate that, this is new terrain, circumstances are changing, and so health needs, accommodation, accessibility needs may be changing as well. And we do want to make sure that we are responding to the unique needs of individuals and making sure that we've got the right support for students. So again, just encouraging folks to reach out to Student Accessibility Services, and they work closely with the Equity and Inclusion Office.
Great, thank you both. And I just want to reinforce, we are absolutely committed to you, our students. So please do not hesitate to reach out if you need resources. Okay, our next question was the second most upvoted question. And that question is for Sean Van Koenet. And the question is, will students be able to opt out of the McMaster gym and recreation fee if a hybrid approach is adopted?
Thanks, Dr. Tai, and welcome everyone this afternoon. I want to echo President Farrar's comment about I can't wait to see everyone back on campus. It's been a long year and a half here. So in answer to the question, so when the pandemic hit, and since that time, in total, we've refunded or credited about $5.9 million in student fees, and our facilities have been closed our athletics facilities have been closed that entire time, and for that reason we've refunded those fees. During that time, we've had virtual programming. We'll continue that through the coming year, but in addition, we're going to open our facilities. We'll need to abide by the provincial restrictions, of course, but as with all our other student services, we will be levying that fee for the coming 2021-2022 academic year.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Sean, for that question. And again, that was the second most upvoted question. Our next question relates to a question that's very, very important for our PhD students. And I'm going to ask Dr. Doug Welsh to comment on it. And the question is, will PhD defenses scheduled for September 2021 take place in person or remotely, or will there be an option for candidates or committees to choose? So Doug, over to you.
Unmuted myself. Okay, thank you, Dr. Tai. First off, I do indeed look forward to the time when we can have in-person interactions. including PhD defenses. For the foreseeable future this summer, the mode will be dictated by public health constraints. When those change, we will be looking to actually be able to schedule on-campus, in-person PhD defenses. To be honest, before the pandemic, there were no hybrids, or hybrids were very, very rare. I think that a lot of students and faculty members have seen the value in having hybrid or totally online PhD defenses. And so we will continue to allow those, and we will continue to book the in-person PhD defenses when conditions allow from public health.
That's great. Thank you. And I think in some ways it's given us capacity to access colleagues from across the world to help us with our exams that maybe we couldn't access before when we had the in-person requirements. So that is certainly a benefit of this mode of operation. Our next question that we received is about safety precautions and parameters. And does McMaster intend to take for in-person classes? So what kinds of things are we doing to ensure our classes for in-person are safe? And so I'm going to ask Kim Dye and Debbie Martin to comment on this question.
Great. Thank you, Susan. Debbie, maybe I'll just begin by talking about some of the things that have been happening already and some of the expectations for instructors, and then I'll pass it to you.
Great.
So many of you may know, we've actually been running a limited number of essential classes. These have been predominantly in clinical programs, and those have been running through fall and winter. We've been running them safely. There's a controlled environment. The students know all of the rules and regulations, the instructors as well. And we've had no outbreaks on campus. Our learning spaces are safe and clean, and we look forward to continuing with those practices. We're making sure that these are safe for you, our students, for our TAs, and for our instructors as well. So we know what we're doing in this space, and we're going to continue to do that well. As an example, everyone is expected to wear their masks on campus and inside classrooms and labs. For wet labs in sciences and engineering and health sciences, students will change into a medical mask during the lab, and they'll dispose of that after the lab. Every instructor who's teaching in an in-person space, whether it's a lab or a classroom, is required to have a plan on how they will safely teach in their classroom. They don't have to design that on their own. The university is working to provide them with those plans so that they can implement them. And again, that will include masking. It will include distancing. It will include best practices for sharing and using lab equipment and how to have conversations with one another. Your instructor and or your TA will give you all of this information before you come to campus. So we're going to be opening up those Avenue to Learn pages well in advance of the term, and any information that you need to be ready for those classes will be provided to you there. And you'll have the first week of term as well online in most of your classes to think about this information, ask questions of your instructor, and make sure that you're comfortable with all of the processes that you're going to be involved in. So as I said, Avenue to Learn is going to go opening. It will open up much earlier than perhaps you've seen in the past. I'm one of those instructors that open up my Avenue to Learn page the day before. And I promise I will never do that again, but we will be opening those up during the month of August so that you can get all of the information you need for each one of your courses. And I guess overall, the campus is going to be less dense. We have fewer in-person components. We're doing things well in some online spaces. So campus will be less dense and will be safe for everybody. We want to make sure that our campus community and one another are safe at all times. So Debbie, I'll pass it to you just to talk about some of the more of the spaces and the processes that we're going to be implementing in fall.
Sure. Thanks so much, Kim. So I'm actually really excited to finally get to talk about bringing people back to campus. And on behalf of everyone in facilities, our staff have been on campus since the beginning of COVID. So we're all really excited to have students and staff and faculty returning. We've been preparing for fall for a while now. And so I'll just kind of highlight a couple of the different areas that we've been focusing on. But I do want to make sure that you keep in mind that your health and safety, the safety of our faculty and staff is our priority as we bring the community back this fall, and that we have been and we will continue to follow all the public health guidelines. So our custodians have been working really hard on campus since the beginning of the pandemic. The campus has been clean and functioning, as Kim has indicated. In September, our custodians will begin cleaning all classrooms and lecture theaters every evening. After we do a thorough clean, they're also using an electrostatic spray each day in every room. We will have hand sanitizer and disinfectant wipes in every classroom for personal use. So you can use those on your own if you want to take an extra wipe or an extra precautionary measure before you use a workstation. High touch point surfaces and washrooms will be cleaned at a far greater frequency than what we did pre-pandemic. And all of our indoor spaces will be laid out with 2-meter physical distancing guidelines. We'll continue to monitor public health guidelines to ensure that we adapt our layout as the regulations change. But for now, everything on campus will be laid out, assuming that we're social distancing with 2 meters. There have been a lot of questions about ventilation on campus, and we're continuing to perform updates on our ventilation systems in all the buildings on campus, including our student residences. We follow a standard called ASHRAE, which is a recognized North American society, and it provides a standard and guidelines for ventilation and indoor air quality. We'll be maximizing fresh air, and we'll be keeping recirculated air to a minimum across all of our buildings on campus. We're also in the process of installing something called a MERV 13 air filter. They're being installed in all of the buildings on campus, and they help remove finer particles from the air. And the last thing that we're doing is we're also looking at all of our signage on campus. So that signage is on buildings now, and we'll ensure that the signage that you see as you come into buildings reflects current public health guidelines, which will be encouraging social distancing and the wearing of masks indoors and all times on campus. So we're working on all of those things right now, and we'll continue to do all of this activity before you get here in September.
That sounds great. Thank you so much for those answering those questions, because I think they're a high priority on everyone's mind. I have just been alerted that we've had a live question, and it relates to where you would be able to find the class schedule. And so I want to reinforce it's posted in Mosaic, and it includes the instruction mode. So if you go to your Mosaic, you can look up and see the complete class schedule is posted. And that's where you'll find the calendar. Okay, so moving along, we had a number of other questions that came in about student-facing services, learning resources, and amenities, and what would really be available for the fall semester. So what I'd like to do is start by talking a little bit about library and study spaces, and then I'm going to pass it along to Debbie and Sean to speak about some of the other student-facing resources on campus. So the first set of questions that we received that myself and Debbie are going to tackle is what restrictions will there be for libraries and other seating areas on campus? Will we have to book spots at the library still even for common space? And then the second part of this question in this area is how will students be expected to attend a virtual class immediately after taking an in-person class? And also wondering, won't libraries have limited seating due to restrictions? So I'll start and then pass it over to Debbie. So first and foremost, the McMaster University libraries will be open for the fall term. We will be opening our library spaces to a maximum capacity, which is permitted by public health guidelines. And our number one priority will be safety of our staff and students. So although there's not yet a final decision around capacity for our libraries for the fall term, I can assure you that our library leadership is planning for a number of different scenarios and will be ready for whatever we have to deal with at that time in the fall. And I'd also like to say that once a classroom schedule for the fall has been released, it might be possible to look at classrooms and other large spaces that can be used for student study activities. Debbie, would you like to add a little bit to this question as well, or these questions?
Sure. Thanks, Susan. So we're definitely looking at increasing the number of indoor study spaces that we can, that will allow students to study in a physically distanced way. We're working with both the library, the staff from the Student Center, and our staff to try and offer as many indoor socially distanced spaces as possible for fall. So that might be spaces that are normally used for a different function that we'll try and convert into study space for the fall, especially while our libraries are not necessarily at full capacity. And the other thing I just highlight is that we're also looking at maximizing opportunities for outdoor space on campus. So for those of you who have been to the campus before, there's lots of green space, lots of beautiful outdoor spaces. And we're investing in a lot of different types of outdoor seating, everything from Adirondack chairs to benches, picnic tables. We're painting some circles on the grass in front of Johns Hopkins Engineering's and Berks Sciences, so that students have a space, or faculty or staff, where they can be socially distanced. And we're also going to look to install a few tents on campus in case people need to get out of the sun. We're hoping to have those spaces to allow people to have outdoor interactions in addition to indoor interactions. And the UTS team has been really working hard on the wireless network on campus. So we've tried to position those seating areas to coincide with the Wi-Fi improvements. So you'll have good Wi-Fi technology, and you'll be able to be outside. We'll also look to have those disinfectant wipes available for personal use outdoors as well as indoors, and they'll be regularly cleaned by our custodial team. And those spaces are popping up over the summer on campus. So furniture has already started to arrive. So we're excited to get those up and running.
Great. Thanks, Debbie. I know I can't wait to sit outside on campus. It's going to be great, actually, I think. All right, so I just wanted to mention quickly that we are watching the Slido and are trying to answer a combination of the most frequently asked questions, the most upvoted questions, and a diversity of questions across topics. So we see your questions, and we're doing our best to try to answer them the best we can. Okay, so I just wanted to ask the next question, and this is for Sean Van Kunent. And the question is, will any of McMaster's facilities be available this year? So gyms, food services, et cetera.
Yeah, thanks. And we want to provide as much ability to be on campus, have campus life, have these services that we're used to enjoying. And so, for instance, in athletics, that topic came up before, our facilities will be open. Of course, there will be some construction as we're completing the expansion of DBAC this year. We're going to focus on as many outdoor activities as we can. So we do have intramurals planned, focused on outdoor activities, as well as drop-in opportunities, again, focused on outdoor, although as the summer progresses, we also want to explore what we will be able to do indoors. Of course, our hospitality services, they're going to have 11 of their 18 outlets open, including La Piazza in Musk. That'll be open on August 3rd. Most of the rest of the outlets will be opening between August 18th to September 7th. And then the remaining outlets, they're targeted to open in January. As well, the restaurant partners, you'll be able to use your meal card off campus beginning on August 3rd as well. So you'll have food, there'll be opportunities to exercise, and that's building on all the things that facilities is doing, where we'll have places to study, be outside, and socialize.
That's great. And Sean, it's great that that's going to actually start in early August. I think that's fantastic, because a lot of people will be coming back to campus in August. So I think that is really terrific. Okay, so I'm going to shift gears a little bit here. And one of the areas that we received a lot of questions was pertaining to vaccinations in our community and on campus. So the big question here is, will it be a requirement for students to be vaccinated to return to campus? And if so, is one shot sufficient? And will they be required to be fully vaccinated? So I'm going to start answering this question, and then I'm going to have Sean Van Kunent share some results from a recent survey that we've just conducted. So first and foremost, this question is one that we have considered very carefully and have collaborated closely with Hamilton Public Health to determine our plan for community vaccinations. So it is important to note that the government of Ontario has not mandated vaccinations in the workplace or in schools. So in keeping with this policy, we are not requiring students and residents to be vaccinated or any other student, staff, or faculty to be vaccinated before coming to campus. However, we are strongly recommending that people do get vaccinated as soon as they are eligible, as vaccines are an important step towards moving out of the pandemic. So we will continue to require other safety measures such as mandatory masking, cleaning and disinfection, which you heard about already, and physical distancing as layers of protection for our whole community. Sean, I'd like you to talk a little bit about some of the recent information as well related specifically to students in our survey.
Sure, and we, many of you hopefully saw the survey that we sent out late last week and early this week, and we've just gotten the results. Out of around 16,000 responses, 94% overall have indicated that they've either received a vaccine, at least one dose, or intend to be vaccinated. So very high percentage, great result, and of course we want to encourage everyone to be vaccinated. Not only that, but of those who have secured a place in residence, the result there is about 97% on that survey indicated that they would be vaccinated by the fall. So this is an excellent result, and very confident now that we're a community that is going to be well protected against COVID. I should also mention, sorry, Susan, one other thing I forgot to mention. If you're an international student and you haven't been vaccinated, you are covered under the University Health Insurance Plan. So if you haven't received a shot when you get here, you can do that without paying anything. Thanks.
That's great. Important point to note, Sean, and I know we are very pleased with the results. 94% of our student population is saying they're going to be vaccinated, and 97% in residences. So I know we take great comfort, the McMaster community, knowing that our community is protected. So that's really great. Thank you. And thank you to all the students who responded. It's really important that you do respond. All right, our next questions are for Dr. Paul O'Byrne. And Dr. O'Byrne, will students who are fully vaccinated and can show proof be required to wear masks on campus? And if so, what would be the rationale supporting that decision? And then secondly, if masks are required on campus for all or part of the school year, will they be required just indoors or on sidewalks and outdoor spaces as well?
Thank you, Dr. Tai. So here at McMaster, we have and will continue to follow the local, provincial, and federal public health directives around masking, including for fully vaccinated people. The reasons for this, of course, are firstly to provide the optimal level of safety for our students, faculty, and staff, but also the fact that many people, both vaccinated and unvaccinated, are uncomfortable and would prefer that everyone wear masks until other directives are formally given. And of course, once it's considered safe and appropriate according to public health guidelines to no longer mask indoors or in crowded settings outdoors, we will change our policies to align to the public health policies accordingly. But for the moment, the rule is that people have to be masked indoors in any setting, regardless of vaccine status, and in outdoor settings when a 2 meter or 6 feet distance cannot be maintained.
That's great. Thank you, Dr. O'Byrne. So we actually have a couple of live questions that have come in. So I'm going to ask Sean Van Koonit to come back on the screen here. And the question for you, Sean, is what capacity are the residences at right now? Do you know when the capacity will open up more? And will varsity sports resume in the fall semester?
Sure, thanks. And our residences are planned for the fall to be at 93% capacity. We have set aside rooms for those who may become ill and need to be isolated. When or whether we ever get to 100% of our rooms being available, that's a decision that would be made probably closer to this time next year. But for this year, we have allocated all the beds to incoming first-year students. There is a wait list, if that's part of the question. There is a wait list as some students change their mind, and we'll go into that wait list as we would any other year. In terms of athletics, there is a plan to have university athletics this fall. The schedule will most likely not look the same as it normally would. And so, for example, for many of the fall sports, they would start, and especially football, would start training camp earlier in August. And that may be pushed out, and therefore the first games will be pushed out a little further into September. But the plan at this point is definitely to have varsity athletics. The other change that will most likely be made there are limits around how many can be put inside, especially in a gym environment or even in an outdoor stadium, in terms of gathering sizes. So we'll have to take, again, our direction from the province on that. But yes, a varsity season is planned.
That's great to hear. That's really quite encouraging. Okay, our next questions are really around mode of instruction for courses and whether students will be able to choose to learn in person or online. So I'm going to ask Kim Dye and Doug Welsh to tackle these questions. So there's 3 of them. In a hybrid model, will the same course be offered both online and in person? Will McMaster ensure that all courses have virtual options for the fall semester? And some of us really do enjoy virtual school, so will that continue? Do international students have an option to choose online or in-person classes for the fall? So over to you, Kim and Doug, for this.
Perfect. Thank you, Susan. Doug, is it okay if I begin with the undergrads and then I'll leave the graduate students to you? Awesome. So I'm just coming from teaching a spring course, the community engagement course. And if any of you are here, really looking forward to seeing all of you in person. Hybrid learning and blended learning enable us to do a little bit of each of those things. It allows us to build relationships in person and then still learn and study remotely. So Susan, there were 3 questions there. Let me try and answer them with 4 answers. So 1, as we've said a couple of times, you now have in hand information that you need to identify courses that are going to be offered in fall, either remotely or in person. So you can go in and make your course selections based upon this additional criteria. I know that you take lots of different criteria into consideration when you choose your courses, but now you can also add into that whether the course is online or virtual or in person. So in some ways, to address the question of whether or not you'll be able to have courses in fall, some of that's up to you in terms of your course selection. So enrollment begins on Friday for those of you who are in level 5, and enrollment will continue to the end of June. So given that, what about this idea of remote learning? For our international students, we understand that there's uncertainty around what fall will look like for them, just in terms of getting to Canada and getting to campus. So you will also have the option of choosing those online and virtual courses. I appreciate for many of you that a gradual return to campus is best. And again, you can go into your course selection with that in mind and take those online and virtual courses, or maybe just more of those and keep the number of in-person experiences low. But do keep in mind as you're making these choices in fall, this does impact your whole year. We are planning to come back to full capacity in winter, so incorporate that into your planning around how close you're going to be to campus or whether you're going to be on campus. So that does then invite this question of what is hybrid learning? What is blended learning? It's not simple. There are lots of different ways that we can engage with students in a hybrid or blended environment. Hybrid and blended learning incorporate different types of teaching modes. For example, you might be in a course where the lecture is going to be online. It might be recorded. It might be virtual and synchronous. But then your lab might be in person. And so already that course is a hybrid. It's a mix of these in-person and remote components. Most of the courses that you are designated in person will still have some component that's online, whether it's engaging on Avenue to Learn, or whether it's watching some modules and preparing for the lab, or engaging in discussions with your peers. So those in-person courses are going to be hybrid, but in many different ways. Most of our large classrooms, as I said before, are equipped to record and stream lectures, but this doesn't mean that automatically a course is being offered in two modalities. It means that students will have different ways of engaging with that lecture material. They'll have increased flexibility. They'll have different ways of reviewing and catching up with the recorded material, but it doesn't automatically mean that you have a choice about what you're going to do, because there might, again, be components that are in person that are required. So again, make your choices intentionally now based upon the designations that we've given you. If it says in person, expect that there's some in-person component that you have to be on or near campus for. But faculties have been really working incredibly hard to provide as much flexibility for students, understanding that there's uncertainty for all of us as we move into the fall. So that does leave that last question: will every course have virtual options for all, for everybody? And the reality is no, every course can't do that. There are courses that require in-person components. If you're not comfortable coming to campus in fall, then you can defer that course to later, or you can think about taking another course instead in fall. If you're not able to attend an in-person component that is a requirement for your program, we understand that that puts you in a very difficult position. We want you to have control of lots of choices when you're selecting courses, but we also understand that we have prerequisites and program requirements that are imposed upon you and that you don't have choice over. When those components are in person, again, highly recommend that you, if you're not able to be on campus, either because you are an international student or because you have concerns about your health or the health of folks with whom you're living, then contact your associate dean's office or your program office. And there are some circumstances where consideration can be given to you. Unfortunately, that's not true in all programs. In some programs, the requirements are such that you have to complete this component in person. And again, your advisors will be able to help you work through those pieces and see ways in which you might be able to defer a course, or again, maybe just limit the amount of time that you're on campus. Maybe you can limit it to one day instead of coming onto campus more than that. So I really highly recommend that if you're feeling conflicted or confused or anxious about your return to fall, our advisors in all of our associate dean's offices are incredibly wonderful people. They're there to help you. You can contact them remotely and they will provide you with advice along the way. So don't feel like you're in this alone. Reach out to them to get advice. So Doug, I'm just going to pass it to you to talk a little bit more about the graduate students.
And I will first off, thank you, Kim. The graduate situation is quite a bit simpler, I would say, than the undergraduate. So let me start by saying that the deadlines and schedules that have been mentioned for undergraduate, they're up, but the graduate versions are not yet up. Those will be coming up in the coming weeks. They will also not be as granular as the undergraduate schedule. For instance, at the graduate level, we don't break out labs, we don't break out tutorials, we don't break out lectures. And so what you will see is whether or not it's in person or online, and that will be the initial condition. So for programs that have international students, significant numbers who may not be able to arrive, we've learned how to do this online instruction this past year, and that part will continue. But unlike undergraduates, most of our graduate programs are, the space is actually controlled by the program. So it doesn't need to be locked into this rigid schedule. So if and when public health allows, many of these programs can elect to actually meet in person as soon as that's possible. So our guidance has been come as close to MAC as you can, and we will be giving you every opportunity we can for in-person experiences at the graduate level. The one exception is that in health professional programs, they have continued to be in person and will continue to be in person. And so nothing has changed at that end. Thanks.
Thank you both. And I just want to reinforce that you, the students, are why we're here. So we want you to be successful. We want you to be comfortable. And so we will do everything we can to make your experience a positive experience, both inside the classroom and outside the classroom. So thank you so much both for that information. Okay, we have a couple more questions left here. I know we've got about 10 minutes left. And so this next question is about the plans that are being made around accommodations for students with accessibility needs. And it is important to be able to get around campus regardless of capacity. So I'm going to ask Dr. Rigal Shabaya to comment and Sean Van Kunent to comment on this question. Over to you.
Maybe Sean, I can just tackle the physical, what I understand to be a question about perhaps physical mobility and maybe environmental sensitivities as well. And then perhaps you could talk about how to get in touch with services. I think what I'll do is just mention that the university is involved in ongoing conversations around how to make the built environment physically accessible. Where we do a lot of talking around and strategizing around barrier-free campus structures, as well as environmentally friendly, the use of environmentally friendly products, facilities, services. You heard from my colleague, Debbie Martin, AVP Facilities, who's central to this work. There is a commitment to eco-friendly and green products, which may factor into some students' concerns around getting around campus, particularly if there are those kinds of environmental sensitivities. So we're generally thinking about universal design, which means, what kinds of physical layouts and environments will be maximally inclusive for students, especially considering our physical distancing and cleaning and disinfecting protocols. But then, of course, there will be individual accommodations, and I already mentioned previously that we're encouraging students to contact the student accessibility services to talk about their accommodations. But we'll also say that, and Kim Dye mentioned this, is reaching out to your professors and supervisors and perhaps even program advisors as a first point of contact, because really everyone is appreciating the need to be flexible and supportive. So that may be your first bet, is to talk to professors, supervisors about any kind of academic accommodations that you may need that result from any challenges around getting around the environment. But I am sure that some of my other colleagues will want to know, just as I would want to know in the Equity and Inclusion Office, if you are encountering these challenges, to also give us a shout so we can not only support your individual experience, but it may give us information about similar challenges that other students are facing, so we can address those.
And if I could just add, our student accessibility services is there, of course, to help and support all our students with disabilities. And for all students, one of the things we're encouraging for the fall and that we're setting up, and let me back up a step. One of the silver linings of the pandemic was that we were forced to go online with all of our services, and we want to maintain that. And in fact, we want to encourage the first point of contact for all student services, whether they be a support service or within the faculty offices, that would be the first point of contact. From there, depending on the need, your need, and depending on how the operation is conducting their business, the appointment could be in person or online, and many of our services will have the ability to still conduct business online and virtually. So that should accommodate, that flexibility will hopefully will benefit all of you as students.
That's great. Thank you both. Very, very important areas that we need to be addressing. The one last area of questioning is really around mental health. And so, Sean, I'm going to ask you to come back here for a moment. And I would like to know what mental health initiatives does McMaster plan to include as we reopen for the fall semester? And in a hybrid model, only some students will be living on or near campus. So can you ensure that services, for example, counseling and possibly other services, are readily available virtually?
For sure. And just building on my last answer to the last question, it's really no different in the Student Wellness Center, where we were 100% or virtually 100% online over the past year and a half. And for the fall, we will have a mixture of online and in-person appointments on both the counseling and the medical side. I think in the beginning, at least, it'll be predominantly virtual. And what we are willing and able to do is to adjust our operations as the term and as the year goes on to meet student needs and expectations. So mental health is a critical area that we're highly attuned to. We want to ensure that we can meet the needs as best as possible. We'll also be having our group programming in the fall. We're also initiating some new online tools to assist mental health support. So there's some new initiatives. There's the group programming. There's the individual appointments to help support you through your year at McMaster.
That's great, Sean. So I actually do have, before we start to close up the session, there was a question I understand on Slido about whether there will be an in-person convocation for students who graduated this or last year. And I guess what I would want to first and foremost say, congratulations to all our graduates. We're proud of you and we wish you success as you embark on your career and future. In terms of convocation information, it's currently being developed. And of course, it's going to depend on public health and what we're allowed to do. But we do plan on looking at how we can actually think about convocation in the future, and certainly recognizing in some special way our graduates from our programs that were not able to participate in live ceremonies. So we are going to be updating this on our Back to Mac website. And so as details are confirmed, we will let you know, but we would really like to have some formal in-person acknowledgement. So thank you very much for that question as well. So we are coming to the end. We promised that we would spend 60 minutes with you, and we're closing in on that time. On behalf of myself and President Farrar and our team that has assisted me, our panel members, again, Dr. Paul O'Byrne, the Dean and Vice President of the Faculty of Health Sciences, Kim Dye, our Acting Vice Provost Faculty, Arig Al-Shabaya, our Associate Vice President, Equity and Inclusion, Sean Van Kunit, our Associate Vice President, Students and Learning and Dean of Students, Doug Welsh, our Vice Provost and Dean of Graduate Studies, and Debbie Martin, our Assistant Vice President and Chief Facilities Officers. Thank you so much for helping address these questions. I would also like to say that many of the questions that have been submitted will be addressed on the Back to Mac website. So please check the website frequently throughout the summer. Now that we have an understanding of what's on your mind, we will do our best to address that. I also wanted to say thank you to all the staff who worked incredibly hard behind the scenes to put together this town hall. It has required a lot of effort from many people. We had at least 10 other communicators who helped source answers. And I would also like to personally acknowledge our event leads, Robin Obermeyer and Tina Depko, our technical lead, Dan Kim, facilitation staff, Monique Beach, Mary Taz, Kareem Basiri, Christine Yakuch, and Megan Biska. So thank you all to you. We couldn't have done this without you. And lastly, I just wanted to say to all of you is we've really missed you. We want to welcome you for our first year incoming students. We are so excited that you're going to be joining us on campus. For our returning students, we can't wait to see you back. We're so proud of you. We're really wanting you to have a positive experience. And in the shorter time, have a fantastic summer. have a good rest, because when we get you back here, we're going to work you hard, but of course you're going to reap the benefits. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in person sooner than later. Thank you.